How would your career look if you stopped managing other people's perceptions of you and started honoring your own limits? Welcome to the Lawyer Burnout Solution, the podcast for women attorneys who want to move from survival mode to a sustainable, fulfilling lawyer life. I'm Heather Mills, and every week I share tools, strategies, and mindset shifts to help you reclaim your energy, confidence, and career. So last week, my husband and I went to see Laura Benanti's one-woman show called Nobody Cares. She's a Tony Award-winning actor. You might know her from She Loves Me or Younger or Into the Woods. And the theme of the night was people-pleasing. I was laughing so hard at the absurdities of people-pleasing that she was calling out that I was literally wiping my eyes with the back of my hands the whole show. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, yeah, I can totally relate to this. And this is what so many women lawyers do all of the time because of our social conditioning. I started trying to break this people-pleasing habit back in my 20s when I realized I was still dating my high school boyfriend, mostly because I didn't want to rock the boat with everyone else in our lives. It was the first time I saw just how deep my people-pleasing ran. So it's a habit I know from the inside out. And I've come a long way as a recovering people-pleaser. What I know now is how to keep me in the equation, to check in with my own needs and values instead of outsourcing my worth to everyone else's approval. And I see this same pattern in so many of the women lawyers I coach. Because people-pleasing is one of the sneakiest, most exhausting causes of burnout in law. So today we're going to dig into it. You'll learn what people-pleasing really is, and most importantly, what the opposite of people-pleasing looks like, so that you can start practicing law in a way that includes you in the equation. So let's take a look at what people-pleasing looks like for women lawyers. Have you ever taken on extra work from a colleague instead of saying no because you didn't want to risk tension in the relationship? Have you stayed awake replaying an email to opposing counsel, worried you came across as too harsh? Have you taken on that quick client favor that turned into hours of work because you didn't want them to question your dedication to them? Have you sat silent in a strategy meeting when you knew the plan had holes because you didn't want to embarrass the person who suggested it? Or what about signing up for bar association committee meetings or volunteering for office events? Not because you wanted to, but because you didn't want to look unhelpful. And outside of work, have you ever agreed to dinner plans with friends or family when you were completely exhausted because you didn't want to disappoint anyone there either? Okay, so if so, then you know what people-pleasing is, right? We all do. At least if you're listening, I'm pretty sure you know what people-pleasing is. On the outside, it looks like being thoughtful, helpful, nice. And on the inside, it is freaking exhausting. In law, it doesn't just sneak in. It gets rewarded. You're praised for being reliable, a team player, always available. The trouble is that those rewards create a cycle. Approval feels good for about 5 seconds, and then resentment sets in, right? And before you know it, you're right back at yes again. So we have to go back, way back, usually to childhood, to really understand people-pleasing. For me, people-pleasing didn't start in law. It started way earlier, as I suggested at the beginning. I remember getting stress headaches about homework in the 4th grade. I didn't want to disappoint my teacher or my parents. I was the good girl, the one who got the gold stars, the teacher's pet. Yeah, you can imagine how popular I was. By high school, I was collecting every good girl badge I could. Straight A's, student government, yearbook, band. And honestly, I didn't want to do well. That wasn't it. I wanted to look like the kind of kid who had it all together, the one adults could brag about. And then I carried that into my first serious relationship. I dated my high school boyfriend through college, and those same themes of people-pleasing and over-accommodating showed up. I kept telling myself that if I could just keep him happy, his parents happy, I'd feel safe, loved, lovable. And of course, those weren't happening explicitly, those messages to myself. I wasn't saying that, but that's what was happening at a subconscious level. So breaking up with him was one of my first wake-up calls. I finally knew what I didn't want. But here's the harder truth. I still couldn't name what I did want. That was the pattern underneath. I'd spent so much energy pleasing parents, teachers, boyfriends, bosses, that I didn't have a clue what I wanted for myself. So when it came time to pick a career, I froze. I couldn't answer the question because I honestly didn't know. I never put it in those words back then, but I was stuck in this impossible calculation. What would please everyone else? Mom, dad, professors, my boyfriend's family. I had no idea what would make me happy. And law school, of course, was the perfect breeding ground for this pattern. Yeah, there are those charismatic, outgoing, arguing courtroom types who are, quick on their feet. Those people ended up in law. But then there's another stereotype too, the one that I fit into. High achievers, book smart, introverts, people pleasers, highly sensitive people who don't like risk. Law is full of us people pleasers, perfectionist high achievers who were already wired to chase approval. And the legal culture doubles down on that wiring. Because in this profession, people pleasing doesn't just slip under the radar. It looks like success. The associate who says yes is praised as reliable. The lawyer who smooths over conflict is seen as a team player. The one who's reachable at all hours is celebrated as client first. So on the surface, it earns you those gold stars. And underneath, it costs you your energy, your boundaries, and honestly, it eventually can cause you your sense of self. It's that reward resentment loop. You get the praise, you feel good for 5 seconds, then you're left holding the exhaustion, the resentment, the Sunday night dread. So people-pleasing is never about generosity. For me, it was an attempt to make people think I was kind, that I was nice, that I was the good student or the good associate or the good daughter, or it wasn't actually about caring for other people. It was about managing what they thought of me. And that's why I call it what it really is, my brain's safety strategy. As a kid, I honestly believed that keeping people happy was the best way to stay out of trouble and to avoid conflict and to feel safe. All these people around me weren't doing that, and I never understood what's going on with them. Why don't they know? It's like my brain really couldn't compute another way. Because I thought that people-pleasing kept me safe from my parents' disappointment, safe from conflict, safe from the sting of rejection or abandonment. If I was the good student, the helpful daughter, the easy girlfriend, then maybe I could avoid someone being mad at me or pulling away. My amygdala was running my life, and it linked approval with safety. The problem is that same wiring followed me into adulthood and into law. And what once felt like a protective mechanism that worked for me started exhausting me. So what's the opposite of people-pleasing? It's not pretending you don't care about everyone else. That's not it at all. The opposite is realizing you can't control other people's thoughts about you. Their thoughts live in their brains, not yours. It's shifting the focus to what you think about yourself, your own beliefs, your values, your own priorities. It's creating safety internally by managing your brain with mindset work and through deprogramming your thoughts so that you don't have to outsource your safety to everyone else's approval. And this is what I do with my clients using tools like the T practice and mindset matrix. It also means being willing to disappoint people in order to put yourself back into the equation. To say, I matter here too. My opinion matters. My needs matter. And it's taking responsibility for what you want, your own dreams, your own desires, instead of living life by what will keep everyone else happy. That's the shift. from trying to look nice to actually living true, from managing other people's perceptions to building trust in yourself and your own decision making. So how do you start unwinding this people-pleasing reflex in real life? The first step is to notice when you're in it. The next time you catch yourself saying yes automatically, pause and run a quick check that I teach. It's part of the T practice. And it's just discerning between fact and thought. Facts are neutral. They're the pieces of reality that everyone could stipulate to in court. My colleague sent me an email. The meeting is scheduled for Tuesday. A client asked a question. Neutral, basic, objective. Thoughts are the layers on top. It's those thoughts that your brain spits out at you, usually in a split second, that are opinions. Journalists might call it spin, but it's definitely not the objective truth. And those thoughts are the ones that create the pressure you feel. So for example, here's the fact. A partner didn't reply to my draft right away. And here's the thought that you might be putting on top of it. They must be disappointed in my work. Here's the fact. I was invited to speak on a panel. Here's the thought. If I say no, I'll miss my chance and let people down. The fact, my kid's teacher requested parent volunteers. The thought, if I don't volunteer, everyone will think I'm a bad mom. So you can see the difference. The facts are neutral. And it's the thoughts that generate the guilt, the anxiety, the pressure to please. When you can pause long enough to separate the two, you create space to ask yourself, do I want to act from this thought that my brain is serving up, that comes from my social conditioning as a woman or as a lawyer or as a mom? And if not this thought, do I want to come up with a new one? That's where real choice begins. Once you see the difference between fact and the thoughts that your brain is serving you, you can start practicing a new response. Sometimes simple scripts can help because they give your nervous system a safe way to try something different. Here are two that you could borrow this week if you find yourself in people-pleasing scenarios pretty often. So the first one is like, thanks for thinking of me. I can't meet Friday, but I could deliver a draft on Monday at noon. How does that sound? Or, before I say yes, I need to talk about what I can drop from my plate so that this gets the attention it deserves. And you might be having that conversation with yourself or with someone who wants to assign you more work. That spike of guilt or anxiety that you feel when you say no or push back or, deliver that script, that's just your nervous system learning something new. So you can just feel that anxiety or that guilt. If you actually allow your body to feel it, it will pass. And you won't die. It's just an emotion to feel. You can handle it. So anchor yourself here. Your goal isn't to look good or nice. It's to be a whole human, to remember that you matter too, and to practice law from there. When I was practicing, I said yes to too many assignments, to too many volunteer work opportunities, or things that I didn't have the capacity for. I'd stay late, miss dinners, drag myself home feeling exhausted, and maybe continue my work there. Very unproductively. It took me years to see my yes wasn't really about the work. It was about managing perception. I wanted to be seen as reliable, as good, as competent. But every yes that betrayed my limits disconnected me further from myself. What finally started to shift things wasn't better time management. It was rebuilding self-trust. It was reminding myself, and again and again, I matter too. So before you say yes to the next request, take 10 seconds for a quick check, fact versus thought. What's the bare fact of what's being asked of you? And what's the thought that your brain instantly adds about what it will mean if you say no? And from there, you can try one of those scripts or come up with a new thought. Notice the discomfort. Breathe. That's not failure. That's you building capacity. So what I hope you're taking away from this episode today is that people-pleasing isn't proof that you're kind or competent. It's an attempt to look that way, to manage approval and avoid risk. And every time you pause and separate fact from thought and include yourself in the decision, you're building a new reflex. You're building self-trust. And this doesn't have to be a massive overhaul. 1 rep at a time is how you loosen this old pattern. So if you're ready to stop people-pleasing and start practicing law from self-trust instead of fear, I'd love to help. Book a free call with me at heathermillscoaching.com/call. We'll look at where you might be caught in patterns that once made sense for you, but no longer serve you. And we'll map out your next step towards deeper self-trust. That's it for today. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. Remember to be kind to yourself, even when you're people-pleasing. It's okay. 1 step at a time. And I'll see you next time.